for attending this event and for your interest in the Geo Impacts program. My name is Francesca Rebar. I'm the program manager at the Beck Center for the Geo Impacts Fellowship. I've been here for a little over 2 years now, so this will be my 3rd year running the program. And I'm really excited about some of the changes that we're doing. Obviously, it's virtual, which is not as positive, but I think it's given us the opportunity to really vamp up some of the support that we offer. And this session is really going to focus on the 4 alumni that we have here, Claire, Arnav, Ying, and Ananya. And they'll be able to tell you a little bit about their experience. Obviously, their experience was a little haphazard because in March, we got some COVID news and pandemic antics. So we had to transition really quickly, but now we have ample time to mindfully prepare and adapt the program for a virtual fellowship this coming summer, and the workshops and support that we can provide you in the spring will definitely be more aligned to help prepare you for that. So I'm really excited for the students to really take the lead and tell you a little bit about how it went for them. At any time, feel free to start dropping some questions in the chat. After I pose a couple questions to the alumni at the beginning, there'll be time for you guys to unmute yourselves if you'd rather ask in person. Definitely keep the questions more focused on the students. And if you do have questions that are a little more tactical or logistical, I will be doing office hours the next 2 weeks, and I'll be sending via email a Zoom invitation and the times for that. So if you have more specific questions, then I'll be able to give you an overview about that. At the end of this session, I'll give a little recap of what the application timeline and process will look like. So I'll let you guys get all of that information as well. And if you don't want to publicly ask any questions, you can private chat me as well. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to our panelists. I'd love if you guys could introduce yourselves, let everyone know your name, which they can read, your year, what school you're in, your major, and then tell us a little bit about which Geo Impact partner you worked with, and like a sentence or two about what their work focuses on. And while they're going through that, if the attendees could put in the chat their information as well, like their school year major, we'd really appreciate getting to know you that way. So I'm going to turn it over to Arnav to start us off.
Hi, everyone. I'm Arnav. I'm a sophomore in the SFS, majoring in international political economy. So this past summer, I had the opportunity to work with the Federal City Council, which is one of the Beck Center's great partners. In short, the Federal City Council is a civic organization in DC that seeks to promote economic development throughout the city, but more specifically, they look to kind of engage the business community to help with a lot of their efforts to promote like the daily lives of many DC residents. And so that means that the Federal City Council has a really large network of some of the most prominent CEOs throughout the area, and business leaders and politicians as well. So it's a really great organization with a great network. As for like kind of how my experience went virtually, I would say like the hardest thing at first was just kind of feeling connected to the city from like where I was at home, because you want to be able to feel connected to the work you're doing, but I kind of got over that by just reading a lot of local news outlets and just trying to stay connected through that. That's what really helped me, and by the end of my internship, I felt like I was still really connected to the heart of the city. I was connected to all the news coming out of the city. So that's kind of what helped me get through the summer virtually.
Thanks, Arnav. And I'll pass it over to our other domestic partner participant, Ying.
Hi everyone, my name's Ying. I'm a junior in the SFS studying culture and politics with concentration in immigration. And this summer I had the opportunity to work with the Center for Civic Innovation, which is a nonprofit organization based in Atlanta. And the work they do is they focus on social impact and social investment, specifically in Atlanta. They're Atlantic-grown institution, and they started in 2014, so it's a very young company. And the work they do is really focused on providing solutions, sustainable and social impact solutions to really address the systematic challenges that has been affecting Atlanta as well as the Atlanta metropolitan area for however long that they have been impacting. And this summer, I really got to focus on the investment side of the social impact investment side of CCI, and I worked on a lot of research. And I think for me, what was really difficult, what was a challenge during the virtual experience was really just like getting to know Atlanta, because I've never been to Atlanta. So like I was really getting excited to go to Atlanta, but the CCI was really helpful in like giving us presentations, and the staff was really knowledgeable of just giving us like introduction to Atlanta and like the different issues that we're focusing on during the summer, the different projects.
Thank you. And Claire, if you want to introduce yourself next.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Claire. I'm a sophomore in the SFS planning to study culture and politics. And the organization I worked with was Žena za Žena International, who are based in Sarajevo, Bosnia. They basically work on women's empowerment generally, and they do programs in civic engagement as well as entrepreneurship. And they just have like a very diverse portfolio. They work with both like rural and in cities. So they have a lot of different projects that we kind of got to experience. So my time there, we were focused a lot on the fundraising side of things, but we did get the chance to kind of observe the projects that they're working on and the things that they have planned for the future. In terms of challenges of working virtually, I would definitely say, like other people have mentioned, being kind of connected to the locale and to the office was difficult. But again, both the women at Žena za Žena and working with people like the alumni who worked with them before and doing our own kind of research about Bosnia and just getting to know the country really kind of alleviated that. And it was a really cool experience.
Definitely. Thanks, Claire. And I'll round it out with Ananya.
Hi guys, my name is Ananya. I'm a sophomore in the college. I'm 95% sure I'm going to be studying in psychology. I this summer was working at Mandeshi, which is an organization in Maharashtra, India. And kind of similar to Žena za Žena, they do a lot of work with women empowerment, but broadly, they're just engaged in a lot of community engagement efforts. So that can come in terms of like microfinancing, farmer initiatives, education, sports education, just like anything that the community needs at that time. So over the summer while I was there, I focused a lot on their education efforts, particularly with college-age women from this rural background. So that was really fun for me. We did a lot of really cool projects that I had never got to do before, like having a Zoom conference panel for teachers, getting to try and make sports initiative textbooks. So it was a lot of fun stuff, but I think one of the greatest challenges for me was just the time difference and being on Zoom. So that was a little bit difficult just because it's like 9.5 hours. But I think definitely getting to meet a lot of the people that we were working with, the organization did a really good job of connecting us to the actual like participants of the programs and to the actual community. So it was nice like putting names to faces, and that really like was a good motivating factor.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for introducing yourselves in the chat. Really cool to see that there is at least one person from every school. So that's really exciting to see. And I wanted to take a second to just introduce, if you don't know, Monija Amani. She is a dean in the MSB. So if there's any MSB students on this call, which I see, and you have any more questions or like logistical questions about GU impacts, She works with me a lot and helps to do some advertising and everything. So we really appreciate her, and she's a really great resource. So moving into some questions, I'm actually going to post in the chat a link to our webpage, which shows the partners that we have working with us this upcoming summer. There are a few in addition to the alumni you met, and we also have some new partnerships, as well as ones that we couldn't work with this past summer are rejoining us now that they're more adapted to remote work and virtual, supervision. So with that, I think the biggest change between 2020 and 2021 for the fellowship will be that it was obviously a shock for these alumni to learn that their program would now be done from their homes versus you guys who know that it's going to be virtual already. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and have the alumni kind of share, which they touched on a little bit already, like what was the most challenging aspects of doing it virtually, but how they could see that they, still made an impact and felt that it was still a very mutually beneficial experience for themselves and the partners. So I don't want to call on anyone. If someone wants to volunteer to go first, I'll give them a second.
You can start.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think I had a pretty interesting experience with it because like the Federal City Council, like during my time there, we focused on a lot of issues regarding like, typical city infrastructure stuff. Like, we thought about a lot of transportation issues, affordable housing issues, infrastructure issues, racial equity issues, especially, after May. That was a big part of our work. But the thing is, while being virtual, I recognize that, the pandemic posed a huge issue to like internet equity throughout DC. Like, cause, everything being online means that more people, like some people are gonna be left out, right? If they do not have access to internet or access to mobile devices or laptops and such, especially in the context of, getting a job or receiving an education. So that's kind of what led me to my big like research project throughout the summer on the digital divide or the state of the digital divide in DC. So I guess how I could kind of like answer Francesca's question is like, my experience as a virtual intern, as like a virtual student prompted me to think of this broad issue in the city. And it kind of, I use that, right, to, think about an issue that some people don't really think is that important in cities. Like the digital divide is kind of talked about as an urban versus rural issue. But the fact is a lot of people can't afford internet or can't access internet even in large cities like DC. So I think that's kind of how I was able to like kind of make the best out of the virtual environment, like by thinking of, things that may not have been seen before in cities like DC. So yeah, that was really helpful. I don't know if that could have been such a huge project without the pandemic, but that's one good thing that came out of the virtual environment, maybe just like a difference in our perspective, I think.
Thanks, Arnav. Ananya, do you want to answer that question as well?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit in my intro, but one of the really cool things that I got to be a part of was for Mandeshi, for the first time ever, they held like this virtual, trying to figure out what the name was, virtual teachers conference. And it was basically, Mandeshi has its education branch where they have programs for college age girls for employability skills and like career development. But they also wanted to work with a lot of the local government school teachers and helping them create more interactive and engaging lesson plans, because that's just something that their girls were saying that they were struggling with in college, and it was just across the board feedback that they were receiving. And they were struggling even more because in this adjustment in the pandemic, as we all know, everyone transferred to virtual learning. And in rural Maharashtra, where they're located, that was possible, but even that was very sketchy at times, not a lot of great internet connectivity. Access to devices was really hard, but the few that did have access to those things were trying to put out like virtual learning content, and it just wasn't it wasn't being effective or wasn't helpful. So we designed this like conference with that in mind. And what was really nice about it was that we were able to bring in a bunch of people from all over the state, from different parts of India, like not childcare experts, but child psychologists, pedagogy experts, people that are well-versed in different teaching methods, to kind of give advice and conduct these workshop sessions with the local teachers. And this is just a part of India where that experience, had it not been for this virtual setting, would have been much, much harder to do. Bringing in a lot of people, driving them in, flying them in, would have just been so much difficult. And I remember like one of the participants afterwards saying like, never in my like 30 years of teaching had like I ever had like someone from like Mumbai or like a Delhi come and speak to me, and this was like the kindest thing ever. So like getting to do those things, even if it was at like 3 a.m. in the morning on my part, like managing a Zoom conference, was really worthwhile and really like made me feel like I was making an impact and making something beneficial.
That's so great. Thanks, Ananya, for sharing. It's cool how you can, think that never would have happened if, we were forced into this kind of situation. And obviously, like during the summer, everybody was getting a little more used to like how to use Zoom and, function as a human being from home. But now we're all kind of used to that, especially with, doing this semester fully virtual. So I'd love, Ying and Claire, if you could additionally talk a little bit about how working from home virtually versus, maybe taking classes virtually feels different, and if you have any tips about working from home and doing an internship with especially an international partner, Claire.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, we were talking about this before the meeting started, but I think we all agree that working through Zoom was wildly preferable to taking class on Zoom, because when you work on Zoom, there is this ability to just kind of have your day mapped out and know the meetings that you're going to and kind of the conversations that you're going to have and the work that you're planning to do. And then at a certain point, you can just kind of set it aside, whereas, as we know, school never ends. But yeah, working with an international partner was definitely difficult, particularly because they tended to be in the office really like early for me. And it was a situation where a lot of the times they were not sure whether they would be able to get in touch with us. So sometimes I would wake up and find out that they had like, emailed about meeting at like 7 a.m. for me, and I just slept through the entire thing. But they were very accommodating of all of that. And I think some of the benefits of that was that there was an opportunity to really be in charge of how you wanted your day to look. Like, I know I tend to work better kind of in the evening, so I could just kind of have my day of, resting and then get a lot of work done later. And yeah, you would think that working online, especially because we wouldn't necessarily meet with our partners, like have a face-to-face meeting every day, it might be difficult to kind of stay disciplined and actually get your work done. But I think one of the benefits of doing this as like a fellowship and having a whole cohort to work with is that we had all kinds of like, I could Zoom with my other intern who was working on the same organization as me every day, and we had all kinds of professional development workshops, and that was really like the something that kept me really motivated throughout the summer, even working virtually.
Yeah, Claire hit on a lot of good points that I wanted to bounce off of too. I work with a CETA, which is land-based, so I didn't have the time zone issue, which I imagine is like a challenge. But in regards to working like virtually for an internship versus like taking classes on Zoom, I will very much so prefer doing an internship virtually, not only because like Claire said, you really take charge of how your day look like and plan for that. And it also really teaches you to be responsible of how like how to work and how to like, in a way, self-care, because you can't just be working like for like 9-8 hours, sometimes even overtime. Sometimes it's like a polar extremes. You could either like work a lot less or like work way overtime. So you really have to learn to manage your time. We really have to like, what I like to do is just like schedule certain breaks in my GCal for like this block of time. I will take a break just so I know that I'm like not going over time and not like stressing myself or working myself. So that is something to consider when you're working virtually for this internship, because no one's telling you, oh, it's time to go home, right? What you would do in a physical space. But you are able to like really, however your schedule is, if you're like a night owl, you're able to schedule that time to work more often at night. But you also have to really like, in the virtual mind, you also have to like really set goals for yourselves and set goals and with your supervisors and whoever else is your team to make sure that work is still getting done. But you do have a lot of freedom and you are able to take charge of the work that you're doing.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. And that leads into a good segue. And feel free to start putting some questions in the chat. I have questions for days, so like I can do this. But definitely feel free to start dropping some questions, or you can use the raise your hand feature so I can see that you want to ask a question live. But while you guys are thinking and typing up those, applications just opened this week. So I'd love for the alumni to speak a little bit to how they kind of made their decisions of like which partners they wanted to like prioritize or like were interested in. And I think that you guys were just hitting on a lot of really key points that are pertinent to highlight in your application, such as your ability to be pretty like independent and self-motivated. So what kind of like tips or tricks do you have for you know, the audience as they start working on their applications? I'll give you guys a couple seconds to think about that. And if someone wants to unmute themselves and go first, that'll be great.
I can go, or Ying, please take the floor. Okay. I was gonna say, I think Ying touched upon a lot of good ones, and so did Claire. I think for me, what was really important during the fellowship experience that I think would be really crucial to highlight is just open-mindedness or adaptability, being comfortable, especially with our cohort, kind of having this uncertainty about what it might look like, what your expectations might be, because I think I went in assuming I was going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and then I ended up doing so many more cool things in addition. So just kind of like letting yourself have expectations, but also like being more open to seeing how things change and adapting to that change rather than just putting up walls is a piece of advice. And then when selecting partners, I think I really gravitated. I've always been really interested in women empowerment and education. So Mandeshi was definitely already within the top 3. But there are a bunch of other partners that are really cool. So I just gravitated to what interests I had and then areas in which I could grow. So for example, Mandeshi does a lot of work on the economic side of things or like the agricultural side of things. And I got a couple of touches of experience with that, maybe not a very, very robust thing, but even that little bit of experience I got with that was a much more growth than I had going into the experience, into the internship. So trying to look for areas you can grow, but then also like interests is where I would suggest you guys framing the partner decisions.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Anaya on the like interest as well as like place for you to grow. I am originally like, I'm super interested in working with nonprofits, and I've done a lot of like social justice work in DC. I'm from DC myself, and I work with a lot of the immigrant community in the area. And so when I was picking out the Center for Civic Notion, I saw that like they were a nonprofit and that they were doing a lot of like social civic engagement work that were addressing like attempting to find solutions for a lot of existing challenges that were in the city. And that was really interesting because I've always done social justice work, but I've never really considered doing social impact work. I never even like heard about it. So I really came in with like the mind of like learning more about it, like what social impact is and like what is connection with like social justice and how does that two, like how can I integrate the two. So when you're working on those applications, you come in with the mindset that you don't have to know everything about whatever organization or partner organization you're applying to or like what social impact is. This is like very much so a learning opportunity and a place for you to grow. And it is okay if you don't know what something is, as long as like you're actively learning and open to learning and open to different ideas.
Yeah, I would definitely like agree with that. I'm gonna say my biggest tip for kind of figuring out which partners you want to work at or work for is to kind of just like look at your potential major, right? Or just like look at your potential interests. I know like a lot of GU Impacts fellows like didn't know exactly what they wanted to do. And for me though, personally, I had a pretty good idea what I wanted to major in, like international political economy. But like how I went into it was like, why don't I, rather than trying to approach like this idea from like a macro level and think about how I can change like, global economies or how I can make change in different countries. I was like, first, why don't I understand my, the city I go to school in, right? Why don't we start there? So I see, the fellowship as an opportunity to like start at kind of the micro level sometimes and like to really build off of that. So a lot of us have really big dreams, like coming into Georgetown, we want to fix, this big issue, that big issue. But I think the Beck Center and the GU Impact Fellowship allows you to kind of build the skills necessary first, like to do that later on. So that's kind of how I approached it. I was like, what would be the best foundation for like the goals the goals that I have, later on after I graduate. And as for like the application, my recommendation would be this, like, take a look at the essays that got you into Georgetown, like, go back and reread them. Look at what you want to do at Georgetown, look at what you want to accomplish, and then, then reflect on your time at Georgetown, whether that has been like 1 semester, 3 semesters, 5 semesters, and see like where the gaps have been. Like, think about like what you've accomplished and think about like kind of where, where there's been a gap in what you wanted to do, like what Georgetown maybe hasn't exactly provided for you yet. So for me, it was like at Georgetown, my first semester, I learned a lot of great theories and principles, but I didn't have like a lot of practical experience yet. And so in my Beck Center essay, I wrote, I've been learning a lot about theories in this class and that class, but like, I want to join the Beck Center because of my opportunity to use those theories and apply them, into actual work. So yeah, I think that's the best way of looking at it. Think about what you have accomplished, but then in your application, tell Francesca and the Beck Center, like, what you want to expand on, like how you can use your experiences to become better and really, obtain your career goals.
Yeah, I really agree with what everyone has been saying. It's really not about being an expert in whatever the field of the organization you're looking at is. It's really about wanting to learn about it. Like, it really is a learning experience. So yeah, I wouldn't say choose based on something that like you think you know so much about, but my advice for the application is be able to articulate like why that issue is really important to you, especially because at some point, if you as part of the process, you're gonna interview with like the representatives of the organization itself, and that's like a really good chance. They're the ones who are really gonna want to see that like you're invested in this issue and you're invested in working with them. And I think that if they see that, then like that really is who they're looking for, well above people with like certain technical skills.
Yeah, if I could just add one more thing, I was gonna say, think about your language skills too. I remember like I picked like 3 top organizations. One was the Federal City Council, and the 2 other ones were in Spanish-speaking countries. So think about that as well, because like I know a lot of people at Georgetown come in with a lot of great language skills, and like those become really, really helpful for a lot of fellowships. Like I know I did a domestic one, but a lot of other peers in our cohort, were international, and kind of some of them had trouble with the language, right? But some others were able to leverage their language skills to like really immerse themselves in the culture, even virtually. So just think about that when you're applying to the internship, and think about how you can kind of like leverage your skills in that way, because language is really a useful tool, especially now since you can't like actually be there in person. Language will be that like really great unifying factor.
Great, thanks everyone. Those are really great tips. And this is also a shameless plug for you all to follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. On Instagram, we're actually highlighting each of the partners that we'll be working with next year. And that way you can kind of read a little bit more about each partner and also what projects alumni have done in the past. So we're just at Beck Center. Beck Center is spelled with 2 E's, and don't call it Beak Center in your interview. That's my tip for you. And I want to take a second. I thought about that because Michael just joined us, who is another alumni from this past year, and he saw the post on Instagram and hopped in. So Michael also interned with CCI like Yang. So he won't give an overview of like what CCI is, but Michael, if you just want to like really quickly introduce yourself, your class major, and maybe like what the most impactful part of your summer was.
Oh yeah, those are super interesting questions. So hi everybody, I am a junior in the School of Foreign Service studying IPEC, just like Arnav, which I just learned. The most impactful thing I did this summer, I think one of the cooler projects I got to do was create like a database of all of the different Atlanta neighborhoods and their online presence. And that was a really fun project because I got to be on Google Maps a lot and just street view myself into the neighborhoods as I was like writing a little bit about their online presence. I got to stalk out their Instagram, which Francesca just shamelessly plugged as well, of all of the neighborhoods in Atlanta, and just learned so much through them in that really organic way, hearing from the people directly in this remote setting, I guess.
Awesome, thanks. So I did start getting a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm just gonna paste them in the chat for everybody to see, but I'll also verbalize it. So the next question says, can you please speak to your role with each of the partners during the fellowship? So like, were you part of a specific team or project, or did you help with tasks on an ad hoc basis? And then in addition to that, were there any mentorship opportunities or times to connect with people and learn about their work one-on-one? So I just posted that in the chat for you guys to reread over. I think it's a really great question if anyone wants to start us off with that.
I can take a stab at it. So my role during the internship, like technical role was like executive research intern. So I worked with the executive director of the organization, Rohit, who was a very, very passionate man. Like I love that man to death. And for me, my main project, so I didn't have multiple projects, I purposely focused on one, and it was really on researching the COVID-19 grant process and grant giving process that were happening in Atlanta during COVID-19, and really like unearthing some of the inequalities within that philanthropic field. And it was super interesting to just really see that data to like, because it was something we had inkling with, and what we needed was like data to back it up, as well as a way for us to visualize data. And so I was that, but aside from that, I was also did some like administrative work, and I was also in a lot of meetings with Rohit, like in most of the meetings Rohit was in, the other intern on the executive team was also, and so we took notes and we really got to listen to and engage, as well as to meet a lot of organizations and community leaders in Atlanta. So it's a great way for us to engage. And there was also the CCI also does this fellowship similar to us, of that where they look at social impact and social entrepreneurs in the area, and they look at how are we going to invest in Atlanta-based social impact work. And that was super interesting. And mentorship opportunities, the one thing I think that the virtual environment really hinders when it comes to looking for internship opportunities is that you actually have to be proactive about it, that you have to seek them out actively yourself. Because while there are like these workshops that they have, these partner organizations have where you get to know the different team members, because it's in a virtual environment, and if you do not work on a project with these specific team members, it's really hard for you to like really get to know them and gain mentorship experience unless you seek them out yourself, because they're just like, they're always open to speaking to you about like leadership experiences and whatnot, but you have to seek them out yourself. And that's something I kind of regret not doing earlier. So I wish I did that before, like much earlier in the internship.
Yeah, I can kind of go off that. I really like this question because I think it will allow me to speak to one of my favorite parts of my internship. I had a lot of support like internally and from Beck Center throughout, my internship and throughout the summer. And I was specifically on the transportation and infrastructure team at the Federal City Council, and I had two really great mentors and kind of like my bosses. And they were always checking in with me throughout the day. We had multiple meetings a day, and we had like two like big portfolio meetings a day, or sorry, throughout the week. And so there was a great time to be able to like interact with them and hear what they were doing. I wasn't disconnected at all. Like I really felt like a part of the team. So like, I wasn't just like some intern that got added on to them. Like I felt like I was like pretty much like a new, like a proper hire. And like they came to me for suggestions, they used to come to me for my insight. So it wasn't like I was just taking care of like some tasks that they didn't want to do. I would submit like long-term strategic proposals to them, and they would like, take that into account. And so I really just felt like we were almost all peers, which I really loved. And then in terms of like mentorship, overall, I think that was just great because I got to interact with a lot of other people from the organization. It's not a super big organization, but like just interacting with the former mayor of DC and like having him be at my presentations was really great. I think that was really great to hear. It was really great to hear his insight on, how to run a city and, how to be a leader during times of crisis. And then what was really great is my supervisor for the internship, she connected me to people like in industries I was interested in. Like I used to tell her my interests and she'd be like, okay, here, like, let me set you up. Let's get on a Zoom call. And for example, like she used to work at Lime, like the scooter company, which is really cool. And over the summer, we actually met with one of the Lime's, biggest operations managers. And so I got to just get insight on that industry, kind of like the intersection between transportation and tech. I gotta, she, linked me with somebody from the venture capital industry, right out west as well. She's constantly sending me different opportunities, even to this day. So that mentorship is still there, even while I'm not working there. It's been a really great opportunity. She's always just like, making sure I'm in the loop. And she's really looked out for me. And, two people from the Federal City Council organization have like already written me recommendation letters and such. So there was a really great level of support and mentorship throughout the process.
Going back to a little bit about like, were you a part of one department or like ad hoc? I think, so I mentioned that I was working a lot on the education initiatives that Monday She does. And I kind of like self-selected that for myself, but I also intentionally tried to work with other departments that they have. So they have a community radio station that they're very proud of. And I like did a little bit of research for them as well. I also helped with some of their blogs. I just tried to like I personally wanted a little bit more of that breadth exposure to just all the different aspects of social impact. So it's basically what you want from the experience is how I'll say. I went in and I made it very clear to Mandeshi and to my supervisor, like, I kind of know what I want to do, but I'm also like really undecided in my major and what I want to do as a career. And I want to kind of use this opportunity to get a sense of like what all is there for me to explore. And they were really willing and able to like accommodate in that sense, in finding out different projects I can work on. And they gave me a lot of free reign as well. So like for that conference I was talking about earlier, they actually like let us, the interns, connect with the experts, so like those child psychologists, those teaching experts. So we were the ones like cold calling, cold emailing these people like thousands of miles away, explaining that we're like Georgetown students who are now fellows at Mandeshi. So that was also really cool as well. And echoing what Arnav said, like I still keep in touch with some of my colleagues and staff from the Mandeshi Foundation. They're like such a great place, and I really appreciated, like in spite of the huge time difference and all the chaotic things that were going on there at the time with dealing with COVID, they were so responsive all the time. We have our own little WhatsApp group. I still text them today on WhatsApp, checking in on them. So it's very much what you make it, and I think like what Ying was saying, if you're very clear about that from the get-go, it serves you well.
Awesome, thank you. So we actually have a handful of questions and we are zooming through time, pun intended. So I'm just gonna direct like a question to one of our panelists for one person to answer it. And then I'll repost Solveig's question in the chat. And if each of you can kind of type your answer in your downtime, that'll be great. So the next question I'm going to hand over to Claire. They asked, what does the orientation and workshop months look like? So can you talk a little bit about how those benefited your experience?
Yeah, so it's a 7-month fellowship. It's not just the summer. So there is a lot of kind of both orientation and de-orientation. So yeah, obviously our orientation process was kind of unique because we started out in person, but then we quickly moved to an online orientation. But yeah, I still think it was really useful in kind of setting out intentions for what we were going to do, not just for the internship, but just kind of what we felt, like how we felt about social impact and kind of how our goals and skills can be incorporated into the social impact field. And we got to hear from people, not just from the Beck Center, but people from different parts of Georgetown, and just learning about just doing a lot of like reflection about ourselves and social impact work. And I think it was a really valuable addition to the program.
Thanks, Claire. Michael, I'm going to ask you this next question, more specifically about the application process. Looking through like the partner descriptions, someone noted that how each partner lists like specific project areas. So they were asking for advice if on the application they should talk about their interest in the organization overall or focus on a specific project area.
I think it has to be a mix of both, and I think it's a good time to mention that you'll have a chance to speak with one Francesca and other GU Impact past fellows, and then you'll also get a chance to speak directly to the organization. And that's a different, I think each of those are different times for you to showcase each of those two factors. So I think in communicating with Francesca, you want to show maybe a little bit more about your enthusiasm for the organizations that you'll get to serve. And then I think when you talk to the organization itself, that's a really good time for you to help them really help visualize your time over the summer in terms of the skills that you can bring in and the specific work that they can have for you. So that way you can have a meaningful summer with them. And your application obviously goes straight to Francesca. So I think it would be I think it's important to balance the two, but also emphasize flexibility as well in the summer, because I think ultimately what you're envisioning with the job descriptions might end up being a little bit different this summer as well.
Thanks, Michael. And thanks, Ananya, for answering the question in the chat. Ananya, I'm going to ask you the next question, which is, what role does the Beck Center and your cohort have during the summer when you're working with your organization?
Okay, I'm gonna try and think of like how to phrase this. So the Beck Center is really nice. Again, this is all like how much support you want. They really are there to help you when you need it, and they're there for you to reach out to, which is really nice. I think during the summer we have like a nice little Slack channel going where we posted like, I want to say monthly reflections or so about our experience. And that was really nice because we got to connect with the other cohort members who we weren't directly working with on like a day-to-day basis, and see what everyone's projects are, how everyone's going, offer our own support, give advice, get advice, which was really helpful. And then also with most of the partnerships, you're gonna have like 2 to 3, I think, well, CCS is a little bit different, but 2 to 3 people working with you as fellows as well. So I was really lucky to have 2 amazing other Georgetown students working with me as part of the fellowship, and they were such a great resource to rely on. We all had like weekly meetings, and we would just talk through some of the things that we were working on, even if they were individual tasks, and sometimes they were combined tasks and they were bigger projects. So that was really nice. Trying to think how else in terms of support. It was just really good to get like weekly check-ins from the Beck Center staff and having them available to talk to. Were we concerned about like, how do I give or receive feedback, or how do I respond to like setting boundaries or anything like that? So they were always there when we needed them, but not overbearing, which was the perfect balance.
Thanks, Ananya. There's another question that I think will be the last question I pose. And thanks, Ying, for responding to the other one in the chat. So this question says, can you elaborate on how you plan on applying your experiences from this summer going forward? I think is an amazing question. And I'd love to hear from everyone, but we only have 7 minutes. So I'm gonna start with Ying and then move to Arnav.
I think for me this summer, I learned a lot more than I expected in the virtual environment, especially. And not only did I have learned, like really worked on my soft skills with like communication, research, and whatnot, but also gained a lot of hard skills, which I really don't have a lot of prior to my fellowship, but I did gain a lot, and I'm definitely going to bring that into any opportunity I like enter in the future, and really just look for a way to like really for myself to grow and really reflect the like reflection aspects of the Beck Center, of the fellowship, as well as the reflections that your supervisors and their partners give you are just they're there for you, and it's for you to use, for you to grow. And I think that's like the most valuable aspect of the fellowship, and I will always keep that with me.
Yeah, for me, I'll try to keep this short, but it's really just enhanced my desire to work in public service at some point, whether it be like through internships or, later on after I graduate. I think it just changed my perspective a lot on like what I want to do and what fulfills me, because like, to be honest with you, my experience from the summer was great because I was able to just really like I just felt really happy. Like, I felt like the work I was doing was just making me happy. And I think that's a big part of the experience, just like understanding what work really fulfills you, what makes you whole. And I think I kind of discovered it. I mean, I have still a lot to explore, but I mean, I think I just felt like at, my best during that time period. I think also just in terms like specific areas I became interested in, I think the Beck Center as a whole, this isn't just related to the GU Impacts experience, but like overall, the Beck Center is great at like incorporating technology into their work and like understanding how technology kind of impacts a lot of things that we discuss in terms of government and public service and what's going on around us in communities. So the Beck Center has really challenged me to like think about how technology impacts us, and that's not like thinking about like just computer science or something like that. You don't have to have a formal like coding education to understand it. It's all understanding about how technology impacts people's lives and what we can do to solve it. Solve some of the negatives of technology, but also what can we do to expand the positives of technology to more people. So that's like kind of one specific area that the Beck Center has also just made me really interested in.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Great. So thank you to our panelists, a little clap emoji, all of that good stuff, for sharing your experiences. I'll be sharing the recording out as well. But what I'm going to do right now is drop in the chat a PDF that is also on our website that lists all of the alumni who are still at Georgetown. So this is a really great resource for you while you're, trying to discern which partners you're most interested in and ask any tips as you get ready to apply and interview, so on and so forth. So that's a really great tool, and, everyone's willing to, be reached out to via email and all of that. So definitely continue to, have these questions and reach out to specific alumni and do your own Q&A panel or one-on-one. So I want to spend the last few minutes talking a little bit about the application process. So the application is open until for 3 weeks, so until December 23rd. It will close at like 11:59 p.m. So you can just breathe over your holidays and relax. And the application looks pretty similar to last year. So I think that the question they remarked about, finding a balance of talking about like a partner's mission versus a specific area. There is a new question on the application that asks you to almost propose your own project that you'd be interested in. So I think that that's a good spot for you to highlight if you're really interested in a specific project area that might be listed in the PDF descriptions. So just think about that. And really, I think like the biggest difference about doing it virtually, aside from like, making those organic connections, is that it is a lot more of an independent project, which is an awesome opportunity for you guys, but the partners are also really interested in accommodating what you're interested in. So I think by having that question on the application, it gives the partners a sense of, if your interests really match with theirs. So I just wanted to flag that for you. But after you submit the application, I'll be reviewing all of those, and you'll do first round interviews. First round interviews will take place with a mixture of Beck Center staff, Georgetown staff. I know Dina Mani has sat in on some, and alumni as well. So that'll be new this year, but a really exciting opportunity. Those will happen in like the mid to late January period. And then we'll do second round interviews, which actually take place with the partners. You may interview with 1 or 2 partners. So you'll get advance notice and be able to prepare for those accordingly. But the first round interviews are really to see like if you're like a good match for the GU Impacts program, and really like thinking about the program holistically and how it can support you. And then obviously the second round is a little more focused on the specifics of which partner you're going to be potentially working with. So those are some things to keep in mind. But I'll also be having office hours the next 2 weeks. So if you haven't signed the interest form already, I'm going to drop it in the chat so you can sign that. I'll be sending email updates and all that good stuff that way. Sorry, I can't multitask. And yeah, so you can come ask me questions that way. You can email me, and you can reach out to the alumni from that PDF that I dropped in the chat. So I don't want to keep any more of your time, your evenings, your mornings, whatever time zone you're in. And I really look forward to hearing more from you guys. Definitely feel free to reach out anytime through the process. And thank you again to our panelists who took the time to speak with you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.